All right, everybody. Hello and welcome back to the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast. This is episode 55, coming to you from the beautiful Twin Cities area of Minnesota. Now, Troy, I guess, according to last time I checked, we're listened to in more than 2,000 cities across the globe. How do you wrap your head around that one?
I think that's fake. There's no way it's 2,000 cities.
It's over 2,000. It's like 2006.
No. I see 546.
Well, you're looking at the last. You got to look at all time, bro.
Oh, all episodes. All right, let's see. Maybe I'm the dummy. Yeah, 2011. That's crazy. I still don't believe it, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, well, there you go. Big show for you today. We do have a couple of announcements, which is always fun. So this is actually a double recording day for us. Which have we ever done that before?
I think so. I'm going to say we have.
Okay, well, I don't remember. Well, we recorded an amazing conversation with Daniel Machado from Upper Deck this morning for our next Hockey Cards 101 Part 4, which is going to be all about EPAC. Really excited about that. That'll be coming out the 18th of February, so not this Saturday, but the following. Good reminder, too, that now on the hockeycardsgongshow.com website, we have a special Hockey Cards 101 section where you can go and look at the first 3 episodes in that series. And if you have any friends, relatives, or you want to flag down random people in the street and get them interested in the hockey card hobby and collecting hockey cards, it's a great reference and resource to refer people to that. And hopefully it'll help educate them a little bit and make them less scared to get into the hobby, as we like to call it in Northern Minnesota. Announcement number 2, Troy, is if everything goes according to plan, and now because I just said that, it won't. Right? That's what happens to us. We're planning on the next masterclass, which will focus on the Cup. We're going to record that very soon. We are fortunate enough to have Mitch Grotman, who is a Cup expert and historian and aficionado, to kind of walk us through it started in 2005, right? And that'll be amazing. And we'll probably release that, I'm guessing, the Thursday after the Cup. So hopefully it releases so that would be February 23rd. Looking forward to that. Last little thing is just a reminder that the Hockey Cards Gongshow podcast is a Patreon podcast. So we rely on you, the listeners, to help us cover our basic expenses and help us fund initiatives to produce more and hopefully better hockey card content for you, and even grow certain initiatives to grow the hockey hobby. It's really easy to support us. For $5 a month, you can join our out of 99 support level tier. You also get access to the Hockey Cards Gongshow Discord server and chat with us on the regular there. All you have to do to join our Patreon is you can go to the hockeycardsgongshow.com website, and there's a link to become a patron there. You could go to the Patreon website at patreon.com and search for Hockey Cards Gongshow. There's a link in the show description for the podcast app you're listening to us on, or it's in our link tree within our social media. Troy, we basically put it everywhere.
That's what you got to do.
If you do choose to support us, we will shout you out on the podcast, and also throw in a little plug for anything that, if you're like a whatnot breaker or something like that, we would be happy to give you a little plug too. All right, Troy, you ready for the game plan?
I'm ready. On today's show, we begin with the greatest player to wear number 55. Then we take a look at the top 5 Jack Hughes cards under $1,000. This is followed by a very special edition of the Struggle Bus. You are going to want to hear this. Next, it is on to our social media roundup. We then take a look at some hockey cards in the current PWCC weekly auction. We end the show with hobby news, new product releases, and everyone's favorite listener mailbag. All right, Josh, we are on to number 55. Josh has been upset because I think the quality of people have been lacking lately. But we got a good one now. The most famous number 55 per the Hockey Writers' greatest player to wear each number is Larry Murphy. Josh, Larry Murphy, I know you've heard of him.
Who?
Yeah,
just kidding. You
have to heard of it. You have to have heard of him because he played for the North Stars at one point.
This has restored my faith in the greatest number or players to wear the number hockey jersey segment because it got a little rough for a while there, Troy. I can't lie. You did great.
It did.
I thoroughly enjoyed the content, but and man, it was a tough job, right? When it's like didn't win an award, like took like second place in the third grade spelling bee, and once almost had an assist in an NHL game. It's pretty tough to write a whole segment around that, but you did a good job. So
yeah, we got to work with what we got, so we'll do our best. All right, Larry Murphy, defenseman. He played in 1,615 regular season games, which puts him 12th all time. He played a 21-season NHL career. He played for 6 NHL teams during his career. Started his career with the LA Kings, then played seasons with the Washington Capitals, our favorite Minnesota North Stars, and then our least favorite Pittsburgh Penguins. Then he went on to the Toronto Maple Leafs and finished his career with the Detroit Red Wings. Now, to stem off all the hate from the Penguins fans, I just say that because they beat the North Stars in the Stanley Cup.
Well, they not only beat us, but it was an embarrassment.
Yeah, they kind of smoked us, so we're still bitter about that.
Now, is this the first guy on this list that had played for the North Stars? I don't think I've heard the name mentioned yet.
We've had a wild guy for sure. I don't think we've had the North Stars yet. This might be the first North Star, which is very cool. But someone will probably tell us that, hey, remember like 5 episodes ago you had a guy that was on the North Stars? No, I think this is the first one. All right, Larry Murphy, awards and accomplishment. He is a Hall of Famer. He is a 4-time Stanley Cup winner, 2 times with Pittsburgh and 2 times with Detroit. Played in 3 NHL All-Star games. He was selected to 3 NHL second All-Star teams. He has the most points by a rookie defenseman in a single season ever. It was 76 in the 1980-81 season where he was a rookie. And he also has the most assists by a rookie defenseman in a single season with 60 in that same season.
So he has more points than Mo Seider?
Oh, man, you just can't leave poor Mo alone. I want to go back and count how many episodes you've had a shot at poor Mo.
Troy, I have like 6 running jokes, and that's it. And all I do is repeat them in every show.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So he definitely had some definitely had rookie season points, and obviously had a great career. All right, let's go over his stat line. 288 goals, 929 assists for a career total of 1,217 points during the regular season. This puts him 5th all-time for defensemen. He made the playoffs in 20 of his NHL seasons, compiling a stat line of 37 goals, 115 assists for 152 points in 215 games played.
That's pretty good for a defenseman in the playoffs. Yep. That's impressive.
Definitely.
Who was the guy again that played for 20 years and never made the playoffs?
Don't ask me the name. I just remember we had a guy that never made the playoffs.
I always think of that when we talk about these guys that are like, he made the playoffs in 83 consecutive years. It's like, oh, wow.
Was it Jeff Skinner? Was that the guy? It was Skinner, right? I think it was Skinner. I don't know. All right. Larry Murphy's best season of his career from a point standpoint was his 1992-93 season with the Pittsburgh Penguins, when Murphy had 22 goals and 63 assists for 85 points, which is saying something back then for sure. With the D being more prototypical, stay at home. You still had your offensive-minded D, but definitely a good season for him that year. I kind of found this interesting. Murphy, by his own admission, has said he was not the best skater. However, he was known for being very smart, and the overused term had high hockey IQ, but it actually made sense with him. He was always just in a good position, was a pretty good defenseman, knew when to rush the puck, was offensive when he needed to be, but he wasn't overtly like always rushing the puck up. He was kind of prototypical stay-at-home D, but would do some offensive stuff when he saw the opportunity.
So when a guy like that says, I wasn't the best skater, is that code for I wasn't as fast as other guys? Or what does he mean by that, do you think?
Most of the time, I think they're talking about speed and quickness. But you can get around that if you're always in the right position, or if you don't need to exert yourself to get into a spot, and because you're always in the right position, you can get around not being the best skater. We always see that.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's great players that aren't the greatest skaters. And usually when they say best skater, they're talking about quickness and speed and all that kind of stuff. Also known as a defenseman who was very good in front of the net, clearing lanes, clearing people out, getting his stick on stick, getting sticks on pucks, and making the goalie's job a lot easier. he was definitely an integral part of those 4 Stanley Cup championships that he was a part of. Obviously played tons of minutes, was a great defenseman, obviously rewarded by a Hall of Fame election. So overall, just you look at his career and he's just a fantastic defenseman, and there's not much else to say about him. That's what he was known for. Played a long time. I think now he was doing color work for the Red Wings at one time, and then he got, I think, let go, but then they brought him back. And I do not know if he's still on the Red Wings commentary team, but everything I read about him is like he's really good on TV or radio, whatever he was on, like very insightful, lots of good info. And then he also was coaching there was like a 3-on-3 league, kind of like they tried to make a professional 3-on-3 league. I can't remember what it's called, but he was coaching a team there a year or two ago. So I don't know if that's still going on, but I thought that was pretty interesting. I have one fun fact for Murphy, and I got to get through this without giggling. Murphy was known for the Murphy dump. During his stint, stop laughing, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Murphy would often dump the puck down the ice by lifting it high over the opposing team so that he eventually stopped before the opposing goal line. This would not only clear the zone safely, but would not result in an icing call. The Murphy dump was officially coined by Penguins broadcaster Mike Lang. Now that is an interesting fun fact.
That's a good one. So as you know, right, I used to have a dog named Murphy. He was really big, 135 pounds. He was also known for the Murphy dump, but I think it was 2 totally separate things.
And that was right in the middle of your living room, right?
Yeah.
Murphy was quite the dog. This dog would sit there and literally open the door and just walk in the house and be like, yeah, I'm here, but I'm not going to close the door. Yeah, the dog was something else.
Something.
Still alive, still hanging out. All right, Larry Murphy, his rookie card, 1981-82 OPG, number 148. Again, we're gonna. You probably know where this is. This is it's kind of weird. The pops aren't that big, which is kind of a good thing from a value perspective. So the PSA 10 has a pop of 26. So obviously very low pop count. The last sale or a comp I could find was a sale on November 6, 2022 in the PWCC weekly auction. It sold for $600. So that was kind of eye-opening, but low pop, great player. Probably kind of makes sense when you look at it. The PSA 9 version of the OPG has a pop of 75, and the last sale I could find of that one was on September 9th, 2022 from the PWCC Vault, and that went for $80. There is also BGS graded copies. There's 19 of the 9.5, but I could not find a sale of that OPG rookie card.
Gotcha.
And then obviously with the OPG version, there's also a Topps version. And I thought this was pretty interesting, and I didn't do enough digging, but it's obviously the 1981/82 Topps, but its number is W100, and it looks like they made like a Western set and maybe an Eastern set. And I didn't do enough digging to figure out what they actually did, but the Topps number of his rookie card is W100. And that PSA 10 version of that Topps actually has the same pop as the OPG of 26. I made sure to double check that to make sure I wasn't crazy. And the last sale of that one was on January 14th of 2023 for $155 on US dollars on eBay. So that's what we got for Larry Murphy.
Well, praise the Lord, it was a good hockey player this week.
Yeah.
Not that the other guys weren't good, but a man befitting of the honor of the greatest to wear, number 55, of course, Larry Murphy. So we want to move now into kind of a new idea, but I think a fun one. This guy, Jack Hughes, Troy, you familiar?
I'm familiar because I can never figure out who he's related to or who he is or whatever. And on the game show, I actually don't know how old he is either.
Nope. He's got lots of brothers, and but he, I think, from where the tea leaves seem to be pointing, looks like probably the best bet to be the next NHL breakout star. Came back last night or the other night from the All-Star break in a bang, too. Had a couple goals at least, and I know had a really good game. So we thought it'd be kind of a fun thought exercise to pick out our favorite Hughes cards that have sold recently for under $1,000 US. It's easy to pick out your favorite card when your budget is unlimited, and not that $1,000 isn't a lot of money, but I guess my hope here is that, well, first of all, for everyone to remember that we don't give buy-sell advice. This is not investment advice. So just to be clear, and anything can happen, right? Any player is a freak injury or some crazy off-ice issue or just all of a sudden starting to stink it up away from their values plummeting. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. But with all that being said, I think a lot of people are trying to jump on the Hughes train, the hype train right now. So with that being the current situation, we thought it'd be cool to look at, well, if we were going to look at what are some great Hughes cards that we think are awesome cards, number one, and maybe have the opportunity to go up in value in the future, kind of what would we choose? And so I have 5, Troy, and I'm going to see if you agree, disagree, or if you have any replacements. I'm going to start out by saying that one of the 5 is not his young gun. And the reason it isn't is going back to one of those key factors that we have talked about often now as it relates to long-term card value, and that's the replaceability factor. Is that his young guns is, I can't remember the pop count off the top of my head, but it's pretty big already. I think it's over 2,000 PSA 10 from what I remember.
2,700, I think.
Yeah, and so I'm not saying that you shouldn't get a Jack Hughes Young Guns if you don't want one, or it's not the staple of any PC, but we did want to kind of throw in more the asset kind of look at this, or what is the long-term value potential. And I'm getting really, really more, or I'm getting, I should say, more and more nervous about any of these cards that have high pop counts, high gem rates, that it's just hard to predict what the impact that's going to have on the value going forward. So do you kind of agree there, Troy, that there's probably better options to look at than his Young Guns if you're going to make any sort of investment into Hughes?
Yeah, definitely. And I just wanted to, when we talk about it, says the PSA 10 of his Young Guns is 2,700 with a gem rate of 76%. So there's nothing really slowing that down. His play is obviously awesome. And I can see that pop count probably crossing 3,000 pretty soon. And it looks like it could just keep going up. So that's pretty worrisome. So yes, I agree. Maybe not right now, or maybe not looking at the Young Guns is the play.
Or just getting at a really good price if it's something that you want just to have in your PC. Okay, so we'll start. The first one that I did is, though, one of the 3 core rookie cards that we have mentioned in previous episodes. Not quite as common as the Young Gun, but is out there nonetheless. And that's, I would choose, if I had $1,000 to spend, his 2019 SP Authentic Future Watch Auto out of $9.99 PSA 10. So this last sold, Troy, on February 5th for $950. So just under that $1,000 limit. It is that classic rookie card we talked about. Future Watch Autos always carry good value. They're pretty easy to sell because the equity is so high in the hobby. And I think by getting a PSA 10, it makes it a little bit more scarce, which is nice, right? Because the big knock on an SP, on a Future Watch Auto, is the fact, well, there's 1,000 of them, basically. But the current pop on the PSA 10 is 101, right? So you're kind of eliminating 90% of the print run and creating a little more of a scarce option. So if you wanted to get in on Jack Hughes and you had $1,000 to spend, what do you think of the Future Watch Auto out of $9.99 PSA 10 as an option, Troy?
Yeah, I'm all for it just because it's the PSA 10 version. So we put in some built-in scarcity that way. I wouldn't go for the raw version unless I'm just a collector of it. Okay.
The next option that we came up with is a 2019 OPC Platinum Seismic Gold Auto out of 25 PSA 10. This, Troy, last sold on December 29th for $899 US. So again, under that $1,000 threshold. This one could be tough to get under $1,000 again, but you could certainly try, right? And we just went off last comp for the rules, I guess, of our thought exercise. And I guess my rationale here is, number one, seismic golds are hotter than hot. They're so hot right now, Troy. They are very, very easy to move, and if you ever need to, right, you'll have tons of people jumping on them. It's obviously pretty limited, being it's numbered out of 25. And I also think, like, from a long-term potential, because like right now, I would put him. So if we did the hobby tier thing, right, where you have top tier hobby of current players, you have McDavid, Crosby, Ovechkin, maybe Matthews, right, and then tier 2 would be like your McCarr, McKinnon, and then who else am I forgetting in that? Maybe Matthews is tier 2, right? But then you have like tier 3, And you'd probably have Hughes at or near the top of that tier, right? And maybe what we're thinking is he might be just ready to jump up into that tier 2.
Yep.
And so my point is, given just how much favor the seismic gold has gained in the hobby over the last year, if you could get this for under $1,000, if and when he gets levels up, so to speak, that there could be some big gains on that card. So do you think, again, that for roughly $900, that seismic gold auto out of 25 PSA 10 would be a good option?
Yeah, I'm all about the seismic gold, especially what we've been seeing recently with how coveted those are becoming. They're so coveted, I went and got a Pekka Rinne seismic gold the other day.
You did?
Yes. Ooh. It's kind of it's definitely not centered, but I just wanted one. It was like $3. Mm-hmm. So
big spender. Oh, another kind of this is a fun fact. You ready for a fun fact?
I'm ready.
Had I opted to buy instead of, so I got the seismic gold auto out of 25 PSA 10. If I wanted the non-auto version out of 50 PSA 10, it's way more expensive than the auto. And that goes back to, if anyone heard conversation I had with Jeremy Lee about on the other night where somebody asked us about seismic golds. My opinion is, and it seems in a lot of cases we're seeing this in sales, that when it comes to seismic gold, the actual preference is to have the non-auto version.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. So, little note there. Okay, so recommendation number 1 was the Future Watch Auto at a $9.99 PSA 10. Number 2, the 2019 OPG Platinum Seismic Gold Auto out of 25 PSA 10, both under $1,000 and last comp. For my next one, Troy, I picked the 2019 Upper Deck Employee Exclusive Purple PMG out of 250 raw. Last one of these sold for $294 US on January 7. It's the only rookie PMG that he has, and so rookie year PMG. Are you familiar with the employee exclusive kind of PMG purple versions?
I knew about them, but I didn't know how rare they were or anything. And I just looked this up as you were talking, and holy cow, does that look sweet!
Yeah,
like the background, the purple, just looks awesome with the Devil's colors. That's a sweet card.
It's limited to 250, so it's decently scarce. Anytime you're buying a PMG raw, you have to make sure it's good photos. Look very carefully, because we know PMGs really come out of the pack with condition issues. So that's something that you want to be mindful of. But at roughly $300, I don't know. I just think that's a pretty good buy.
It's definitely
something I would jump over.
It's definitely a cool looking card, and I'm looking at the image, and it looks really good. Except the bottom you can see there's some stuff going on with the color on the border, but it's just a really nice looking card.
Yeah, and kind of the rule of thumb there is that I don't think PMG gets penalized until the grade is lower than an 8.
Yep.
So if you go find other PMGs that are graded, whatever grading company you use, like PSA or SGC or BGS or whatever, and you can do a little compare and contrast to figure that out. So next one, Troy, that I came up with is, again, sticking with Hughes rookie year. It's a 2019 Upper Deck Ice Premiers out of 99 raw. Last sold for $600 US on February 1st. These Ice Premiers cards are big time chases. One of the things that I'm really fascinated to continue our masterclass series and get into I think Cartel is going to come on at some point and get into the era of like starting in 2005 Upper Deck and really kind of understanding where the value in these Ice Premiers comes from. It's not even like a knock on the card. It's just for a non-auto, non-patch, serial numbered out of 99 card, like they can get crazy expensive, especially when you look at like Ovechkin or Crosby, and have had a pretty solid value legacy ever since. It's an acetate card. It's limited to 99. And honestly, Troy, this is one that I kind of picked more from an investment perspective than from loving the card. I just think if you're confident that Hughes is going to really break through and have kind of sustained superstar success, that for what these cards can get to at $600, it's not a bad.
Yeah, this is
the one I was thinking you might disagree with me a little bit.
Well, I mean, I'm not an Ice guy at all, but I don't know the history of the Ice Premiers, because you kind of mentioned like when we do a card, hopefully Cartel can come back on and kind of speak to that. But yeah, it's probably one I would even looked up or chose. So it's interesting to me from that standpoint.
I don't know like what spell, if this is the Canadian spelling or like more like a French spelling, but one note I always want to mention, and I keep forgetting, is if you're not familiar with ICE Premiers and you want to do some card ladder searches or Google searches or 130 point whatever, Premiers has an extra as an ES at the end. So it's PREMIERES.
Well, thank God you just said that, because remember I just said like I couldn't find it, so I didn't know what it looked like, and that's why I spelled it wrong, but now I can see it. So let me look at this thing. Okay, I'm not a fan of the card, but I'm curious of just why these are so sought after and valuable.
We shall learn soon.
He looks like he's being chased by like zombies on this card. He looks very terrified. Oh. All right, no, sorry.
Okay. And then the last one that I picked is, and this one I kind of think is a steal, and I had to check and double check because I wasn't exactly believing it at first, but on January 8th, Troy, somebody got a 2019 The Cup limited logos out of 50, a raw card for $750 US. What I wanted to do is I wanted to find an RPA, and actually looked really hard for this, and I thought, well, maybe like Upper Deck Premier RPA would be a good option. But what shied me away from Premier is all the patches, although they look really nice, and actually like the look of I think it's out of 99 Premier RPA, is that the patches are player worn. It's like if I want to get in Jack Hughes and I'm willing to spend more than $500 for an RPA, I want to find something game used, because I'm just not like 100% sure how all these patches are going to shake out 10 years from now. And when it comes down to like manufactured versus event versus player worn, whatever other distinction they come out to, I'm becoming kind of a game use snob.
Yeah.
I also inspected the card, and it wasn't like totally mangled either. Like any kind of thicker Upper Deck card, it's going to have some issues. And so the one that sold for $750 had a little bit of chipping.
Mm-hmm.
But man, for $750, I was like, I'm in on that. And whoever bought that, I think got a good deal. And that has the potential, just like with Ice Premiers or Seismic Gold or really any of these, if he really, really does become the next NHL superstar, that would be a candidate to be a pretty big card at that point. So how did I do?
I think you did fantastic. You did a lot better than I would have. It would have taken me hours to figure all this out, or multiple, like 10 hours probably. But I agree with most of them. The ice one that you thought I wouldn't is probably the one I wouldn't, but I don't have a replacement for it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I would recommend to people too that it was kind of a fun exercise, right? Yeah. So if you have a guy that you might want to add to your PC, or you might want to add to, I don't know, however you collect, right, to your investment portfolio, take an hour and just look through. Having access to like a service like Card Ladder makes it super easy. But look through all their different cards and just do a whole bunch of different searches and kind of see what cards you like, where the values sort of meet your budget, and take hopefully what you've learned from us and from other shows you follow or things that you read, and come up with a hit list. I would really recommend doing that.
Yeah, and I'll put a plug too if you don't have access to Card Ladder. I always like to go to TCDB, so Trading Card Database. And for a lot of players, you can look up every single one of their cards, and a lot of them have images too. Not all of them, but like your bigger players will usually have images front and back that you can check out too. So that's a good resource as well.
That's good, because for me, I'm real visual.
Yeah.
And if it's just endless words and data, I have a hard time focusing. I need pretty pictures. Probably says a lot about me. But I think that was fun. I had fun doing the research. So hopefully, if you're interested in Hughes, you got some good information out of it. Want to make a real quick mention of our friends and partners at Stand Up Displays. They create awesome card stands for either, you can use mainly for graded cards, but you can also put like cards and top loaders on them. They have lots of city focused cards and a good number of NHL ones. So like if you like Patrick Waugh, you want like Patrick Waugh and Colorado Avalanche, you can put your cards on there. They are developing a Pekka Rinne one at the request of Troy. And we'll have more information on this next week, I believe. But Dan, the owner of Stand Up Displays, is a hockey card guy and a hockey card collector. So that's one of the reasons we had an instant connection with them. And they want to expand. They'll look at expanding their pre-made, not custom stands, and add more cities and player numbers to it. And we're going to try to kind of come up with a fun way to have you guys, the listeners, help them decide which stands to make next. And he's also going to come on and talk about ways to display, to beyond using their stands, but other creative ways to display your cards at home or in the office, which I think will be really great information. So go to Stand Up Displays. You can either get a custom stand made and send them whatever image you want, or use one of their pre-made stands. If you use the code Gongshow, you can save 10% in standupdisplays.co. All right, Troy, let's get this over with.
All right, everyone, please pay attention. For the first time ever on the Gong Show, the struggle bus is pulling up. It's making a special stop to pick up one lonely passenger. Guess who that passenger would be? If you guessed Josh, you are correct. Because apparently my co-host Josh knows little to nothing about Austin Matthews PMGs. To set the stage here, on our last podcast episode and on Jeremy Lee's Sports Card Live, Josh, with absolute great certainty and conviction, declared that the 2020 Retro Gold Matthews PMG 1 of 1 in this month's PWCC Premier Auction is not only a 101, but also Matthews' first PMG card. Well, that's not exactly the case. It didn't take long for a number of listeners to point out that Matthews actually has two PMGs prior to the 2020 Skybox release. There, of course, is the Fleer Showcase PMG, and there was also an Upper Deck Employee Exclusive PMG. So we were made, actually, not we, Josh was made very well aware of this from his snafu. The last few days, things have gotten pretty tense as a result of this at the Gong Show headquarters. It's mostly Troy just walking around, shaking his head, looking up at Josh, shaking in my head again, and just walking away sad. There were so many press inquiries about this that we thought it would be best to make an official statement and hold a press conference yesterday morning with many, many reporters in attendance. It's probably just best for us to roll the press conference in case you missed it. And it is a very key look into Josh and his thoughts around this whole PMG mess. So let's roll the press conference.
Thank you all for coming. The past 48 hours have been extremely difficult for me and my family. Several days ago, I made the egregious and erroneous statement that the current 2020 Skybox Metal Universe Austin Matthews Retro Gold PMG in the PWCC Premier Auction is his first precious metal gems, and that they were not produced in 2016 because sometimes my brain is both stupid and dumb. I understand that my actions have hurt the ones I love. Although Troy nominating Nikita Kucherov as a Norris candidate was easily 1,000 times worse, I understand that I have let him down, and for that I am sorry. To Austin Matthews, I am sorry that I didn't think Upper Deck cared enough about you to produce not only a Fleer Showcase PMG, but also an employee-exclusive PMG for your rookie season. Although I do think it's fair to point out that these are both pre-mustache cards, and come on, do we really consider a pre-mustache Austin Matthews a true AM34 card? To the Gong Show faithful, I will do better not to be so dumb and will invest the 11 seconds it takes to verify something like this in Card Ladder instead of not only just going on our show, but multiple others and looking stupid. Again, these have been very difficult times for me and my family. I can do better, and I will do better. Viva La Gong Show. Sorry, no questions.
All right. There was the press conference. You heard Josh. Now let's hear from him live. Josh, what do you have to say for yourself?
Well, other than I don't know what's wrong with me, and I'm not sure, my attorney Troy has advised me to say very little on this matter, but I don't understand. Like, I thought I knew. Like, I really thought that this is something that I know, and it's funny and embarrassing and really humbling. Like when you think, well, it's also a testament, right? That if you say anything with conviction, it sounds like you know what the heck you're talking about. But the reality is I apparently had no clue. And then not only to do it on our podcast, but to double down and go on Sports Card Live and do it again. Oh man, that was just amazing.
Well,
So,
I hope everyone also noted that Josh couldn't just take all the blame himself. I hope you all heard his little shot at me and my snafu on our friend Nikita Kucherov and his Norris Trophy nomination that I made. But I will take that one.
I had to deflect, Troy. I had to deflect. So, yeah, I'm on the struggle bus. I totally deserve it. I'm going to wear it as a badge of pride and own the fact that I was a total idiot. And I honestly can't explain to you. I really thought I knew that. I wasn't trying to make stuff up, but apparently I didn't. So we'll see if the
listeners forgive you.
Yeah, well, they're pretty nice. I'm sure they will. Okay, want to move on to our social media roundup. There's some really kind of juicy topics here, Troy. Very juicy. And I want to start with actually kind of tying two Instagram posts together. And this is sort of an observation looking at both these posts. But so to set the stage here, on January 14th, the first 2021 Skybox Metal Universe Trevor Zegras base PMG, a green one, so out of 10, sold for $17.91, right? I don't think that's what you'd expect. One of the biggest rookies. It's a PMG. It's green. It is base, but, very healthy $17.91. Well, 11 days later, a Cole Caulfield green PMG sold. But this one was the 97 Retro. So again, it's a green PMG. It's still out of 10. It went from $1,832 US. So what's that? Basically $41 more. And so I think when you compare these two sales, there's actually kind of a interesting questions or stuff to think about that comes out of it. Number one, Caulfield, I think, has generally had a much higher value than Zegras. He's been much more chased throughout the year. And given that there's a definite premium on a retro PMG versus a base, on face value, it's a little surprising, Troy, that it only sold for $41 more. But then when you layer onto that, well, okay, this sold basically, so what was that, 6 days after his season-ending shoulder injury? And you start to think about, well, okay, I wonder what the impact, even in a relatively short amount of time on that injury, played on this sale. It becomes, to me at least, a lot more interesting, right? Because I'm going to kind of make the hypothesis, Troy, that had Caulfield not been injured, that the green retro PMG, given he's was a bigger chase to begin with, it's the green versus the base, would have sold for way more than $41 more than Trevor Zegras, and way more than $1,832 US, and may have been like a $2,500 plus sale. And that's what happens when these guys get injured and are out for a long time, that it really hurts the card value. So what do you think of that hypothesis?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it was sold at. I definitely think it would have sold more, the Caulfield, than it did, obviously, with the whole injury situation kind of hurting that. But yeah, it's kind of nuts when these cards, it's like we've seen, these cards come out right away and they demand crazy value right away. Especially this card. They're both out of 10, right? Is that what I saw or heard? Yeah, so I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with you. It probably, I don't know, $2,500 range sounds good to me. But yeah, that's very surprising how this kind of ended up with the Caulfield injury, and then 6 days later, this card's selling.
The other reason why I wanted to bring this up and to chat about it a little bit is we've done some posts and we've already talked about sort of his impact injury on his like Young Guns and PSA 10, which is already rising pretty rapidly in pop count. We know it's been one of the most submitted cards to PSA. And I think we're both pretty confident that as he goes longer and longer without playing, and as months and months go by, where more and more the pop count or PSA 10s kind of hit the population report, that specific card is, I wouldn't be buying that, expecting it to go up in value anytime soon. And so that's what our look into his card values post-injury impact has been. And this is kind of the first glimpse, I think, into more of the higher level Caulfield cards. And I almost think that as we follow this story or hockey card story, that we have to kind of look at it from both those vantage points. Like what's happening on more of the lower end, highly replaceable cards. And then are there parallels or are there differences between his like higher end, much more exclusive cards? All right, next topic in our social roundup. So we looked at the other day and got a lot of feedback on a January recap where we listed the top 5 most submitted 2022 Young Guns, so from Series 1 to PSA for the month of January. I'll just kind of roll through the top 5 real quick in case anyone didn't see it, and then we'll get into kind of what are more of the juicy topics. So from a top 5 perspective, Matty Beniers had the most cards graded at 363 as Young Guns. These are all Young Guns. Matt Boldy at 211, followed by Owen Power at 149. And then Marco Rossi, Troy, at 144, followed by Kent Johnson at 102. So any of those 5 surprise you for being in the top 5 list?
Maybe it's because we're Wild fans, but how in whatever name is Marco Rossi 4th? That to me is the surprising part.
Yeah, that really stood out to me too, because like as we know, he started the season with the Wild. What did he play? Like maybe 15 games or something like that?
I was like, has he been back up? I mean, I don't remember seeing it unless I just totally missed him.
And he had a really hard time scoring. Like he was like the definition of being on the struggle bus, and they kind of mercifully sent him back down to the AHL.
Yeah.
I think he's played pretty decent down there, but he hasn't come back to the NHL yet. And so to explain how the heck was he the 4th most submitted Young Gun last month, the PSA, you'd either have to say, well, just a lot of people are following the story and really believe in this guy, or it's because he was featured so much as part of Series 1 and especially in conjunction with Matt Boldy, right? They were on the Young Guns checklist together. Is maybe they're a little bit of like hype hangover that are keeping people invested into, like, I guess, grading his cards. I mean, how else would you explain it?
I mean, unless I never know what the actual delay is between these numbers coming out and when these cards were sent in. But that can make sense if they were sent in earlier, like November-ish, December, maybe early December-ish, and now they're hitting the report. Then it makes sense, maybe. I can get around it then. But yeah, that one was Marco Rossi being 4th is still very surprising to me. Maybe there's a lot of Minnesota fans that are sending in cards because they want to will him into being good.
If I had to reorder this list based on the season that they're having, I would do Beniers 1 probably, then probably Owen Power, then Ken Johnson, then Boldy, then Rossi.
Yep.
Right? But that was like the minor story in this list. The big one is the gem rates.
Yep.
So I'm going to go back through and start up Beniers again and go through their gem rate. So to date, the gem rate PSA on Matty Beniers Young Guns is 31%. Matt Boldy, 27%. Owen Power, 41%. Marco Rossi, 36%. And Kent Johnson, 28%. Overall, Troy, the 2022 Series 1 PSA gem rate is 32%. Crazy, huh?
Well, I was thinking about it. Like, when we opened our boxes, I thought the quality was so good. Shows you what I know. And I think I have at least 3 or maybe 2 Beniers Young Guns, and they're in really good shape. So this is obviously really low sample size, but I thought they were doing okay. And then when we just pulled up these numbers, I was like, oh, I'm way off.
Yeah, so we're continuing the trend, right, where Series 1 having really low gem rates, and it's hard to say Series 2 will be high because it's not out yet, but if you look at the last couple of years, all this, like I looked at Lucas Raymond as a reference point, right, from Series 2 last year, 73%. And when you compare to 31, 27, 41, 36, and 28, it's just wild that these are so low. And so when we looked at this for the 2021 class, right, and we were trying to figure out, well, why is Series 1 so low? Why is Series 2 so high? Why was it the same the year before? The kind of prevailing thought this was very logical was, well, Series 1 2021, so last year, was printed in the US, and Series 2 was printed in Italy. And so it's like, oh, Italy must have better quality than the US for whatever reason, and that explains the difference. Well, Series 1 2022 printed in Italy, Troy.
Oh, of course.
So it kind of, there goes that theory. It's hard to, because there's not that big of a difference ever between Series 1 and Series 2. So why are the gem rates double is there something that they learn within the printing process of Series 1 that then they apply to Series 2, irrespective of where it's printed? I don't know. It's just, the whole thing is mind-boggling. It's like you would think that they would all be kind of the same.
Yeah, I have. I mean, that's a good theory. I have no idea. Again, like I've said, I just want to go and watch these cards be printed. Then I'll have all my answers, I think. But I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
I will say again, though, my whole theory on gem rate, when it comes to how low the current Series 1 is, from a long-term perspective, I think it's a good thing. We were just talking about Jack Hughes and why I would be afraid to buy his Young Gun PSA 10. What did you say, Troy? It's like 76% gem rate?
Yep.
That scares the heck out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really want to stay away from that card just because of that. And so if you're a Matty Beniers guy, and he does look like he has the opportunity to be special, and I'm, on my personal kind of rankings and hit list, I'm pretty intrigued by him too. I have a lot more, and I know it's going to, as a result, it's going to be more expensive, but I am more comfortable buying into his Young Gun, like a graded PSA 10 or a BGS 9.5 or SGC 10 or CSG, whatever your preference is, knowing that the gem rate is low because it's going to be harder for the population to spiral out of control. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. I'm buying, the more we talk about it after all the research and the stuff we're seeing, I'm all about lower gem rates for the Young Guns and lower population counts for the ones I'm investing in, we'll say. And I don't do that much investing, but if on the ones I do, that's definitely one of the first things I look at, because we're seeing what happens when those gem rates or those pop counts just start skyrocketing, and it gets pretty scary.
I think the other thing you have to look at, and don't think we didn't all notice your Matty Beniers humble brag, where, well, I think I have like 43 Young Guns. When you're in a situation like you are, trying, I actually have a couple myself. It really makes, if you want to move any of them, it makes you really think twice about having them graded. It's like you can get $100 for a raw one, or take a 30% chance at getting a 10. It's like, I'm not that big of a gambler. I probably just sell it raw.
Yeah, I literally, when I said that part about Beniers and the ones I have, I started thinking about the PWCC, and I could send it to the vault and then do the grading service. But then in my head, I was like, you know what? That's probably too big of a risk. I might as well just sell it raw and see what I can get if I'm going to sell.
Unless you're convinced that it's like perfect and you think it's a gamble we're taking, because the flip side of that is if it does come back a gem, then you're in the money for sure. Mm-hmm. Okay, the last kind of little part of our social roundup is, and we've talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to dive in a little deeper. I think that there's a new kind of breakthrough winner insert, and it appears to be population count. And I'll be like totally honest, like going back to the summer before Series 1 came out, I didn't really know what to think about these population count inserts when they were on the sell sheet. Part of it was too, Troy, I think that the ones on the sell sheet were the Pop 1000 cards, which are the most plain or bland. I mean, they get kind of cooler and cooler, as you would expect, as the number gets lower and lower. But when you look at secondary market sales, they're really, really strong. So, and what kind of brought this to my attention was I found an Owen Power Pop 10 sale the other day that was kind of a record sale for him, and it sold for $700 US. Number one, that's a lot of money for a flagship insert.
Yep.
Right, of not like Connor McDavid ilk player, although it's a rookie, I get it. But more so than that, Troy, that sale is the biggest sale of any Owen Power card to date. So, and there's been a number of Young Guns exclusives that have sold. We had, and now again, there's not like a million 2022 sets out, but Artifacts is out, which will have RPAs that are game used for him, unless they're redemptions. I guess I can't be sure on that. But that's a pretty big number. I also looked to, Troy, it's not just Owen Power. There's been 7 sales of these for $500 or more so far since November. Top sale being for a Matty Beniers Pop Count 10 that went for $900 US in early December. And since the Series 1 release, there's been 788 secondary market sales for these pop-count cards, which come in, just again, if you're not familiar with them, go search for any the checklist, to find out who's on there, but then search for like eBay sales history or card ladder for population count, and you'll see what they look like. They're Upper Deck's way of, I think, inserting more scarcity into the Series 1 release without doing serial numbers, because while they're not serial numbered, whatever population count is, whether it's 1,000, 500, 150, 25, 10, and then there's a 1, which essentially is a 101. That's the total print count of the run of the card. So for the Olin Power 10, it's not numbered out of 10, but you know that there's only 10 that have been printed. And again, given that there's 788 of these that have sold on the secondary market, that surprised me. That's more so, well, I'll give you an example. That's more than any sales of Jambalaya, which includes all the basketball ones from the 90s. And it just appears that they're really popular.
I actually really like them. I know when the sell sheet came out, I knew exactly what they were going. I mean, we both did. We knew exactly what they were going for, and how they kind of look. It's it's a paper card, but it looks like almost like a graded card with the pop count. I'm curious. They have to, obviously these are going to stay on. They've been popular. Oh, yeah. I'm curious if now the next versions, maybe the pop 10s are gold or whatever. They maybe start doing color parallels on them instead of just the number is the parallel. So I'm curious how these are going to evolve, but I like them. I don't think I've pulled one, but they are sweet and I like them. And it's good to see one of these newer inserts hit and become like kind of a fan favorite.
I pulled 2, and I think I pulled both 1000s. They get way better the lower numbered.
Yeah,
like the foiling gets really if you look at the 10,
also they do have different like foiling and stuff once you get okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing, if you listen to the Hockey Card Gongshow podcast, Billy Cilio from Upper Deck was on, and I think last time he talked about they are going to be changing them a little bit, and I think he said something about having there'll be acetate maybe going forward.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. Is that a risk now though, given that these are doing so well, or do you think because the card is like supposed to mimic a slab, so from that perspective, acetate kind of makes sense. But I think it's like the foiling on them that really makes them kind of cool.
Yeah, well, I'm curious to see what the next iteration is, because they've definitely found a place in the hobby.
Yeah, it'd be cool to observe over the next 2-3 years and see if that continues, and then also if the first run of these kind of has a little bit higher value too, because they're the first time. All right, want to switch gears now and jump into one of my actually favorite segments, our weekly preview of the PWCC auction and their weekly auction, and a look at some of the hockey cards that stand out to us. Each week we take a look at, like I said, the cards that we think are most interesting. It's just a lot of fun to kind of see what's out there. They always have interesting stuff, and it gives us the opportunity, Troy, I think, to highlight some cards that we probably wouldn't talk about unless they were in an auction like this, and learn about these cards and I guess share some of the information that we learned. Just a reminder for that PWCC all through the month of February has all access extended bidding. So normally how their weekly auction works is you have to put an auction or a bid in before the end of the auction or when their extended bidding window. And normally if you don't have that bid in, you can't bid during the extended bidding window. But now they're doing where when the auction closes and it goes into extended bidding, whether you placed a bid prior to that or not, anyone can bid on the cards all this month. So you can get in really at any point in the auction. The auction ends on Sunday night, 10 p.m. And we encourage you to go to pwccmarketplace.com and kind of check out the cool cards that they have. So like always, we're going to start with a couple vintage cards that stood out to us and more modern ones. And Troy, you have the first vintage one.
Definitely. So in looking through the kind of the vintage cards that were out there, I had to go with a goalie. That was my first thing going in. I wanted a goalie. And I wanted to find a guy that maybe we haven't talked about a lot on our show. And lo and behold, I found one. So the card that I looked at was a 1968 OPC Bernie Parent rookie, number 89. That is in a BVG 7 slab. I forget, Josh, do you remember, what is BVG, the vintage grading? Was that the vintage grading?
Beckett vintage grading.
So that's what they had. This card is in a 7 slab of BVG. Very cool card. We got Bernie Parent, NHL Hall of Famer, 2-time Cup winner. He was a goalie, if I didn't mention that. 2-time Cup winner, NHL career stat line of 271 wins, 198 losses, 119 ties in 608 games played. He was also a 2-time Vezina winner, 2-time Conn Smythe winner, and named one of the NHL's 100 greatest players of all time. The card itself, it looks really, really nice. I actually really like how it looks. There are no BGS copies graded higher than this one. It is important to point out, if you look at the card and zoom in on it, the bottom of the card, it's slightly miscut. So that's something to look at. It's not a straight line. There's a little, I don't know how to say it, but it's a little diagonal on the bottom. And again, but it looks really nice, looks really clean, looks really colorful. So besides that one little issue, and we all know these cards from back in the day, a lot of them do have these kind of issues just for how they were cut. So, but it is something to be kind of aware of if you're looking at this card. On the back of the card,
that cutting tray is a big deal. And I've learned from Jeremy. So if you're looking at like 80s OPG and it's a really high grade, and I think it has to do with like a lot of the Beckett slabs. I'm talking very slowly because I'm not 100% certain on this, so someone can correct me if and where I'm wrong, because we know that happens. But like, do you remember a couple weeks ago when there was a like Iserman BGS 10?
Yeah, that was perfectly cut.
He's like, oh, that's sheet cut.
Yep.
You don't want that, right? And it's like, okay, that was really surprising. So, and I think it's what the difference between like sheet cut and wire cut.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful, and maybe like on a card like this, you would want to do your research on if that's something you care about. If you just want like a cool looking version of the card and the price is right, then do it, right? I don't see any issue with it. But this is one of the things though that really bugs me about the hobby, and I think goes back to our mission as a show and trying to help learn ourselves and educate people, is that like in the case of that Iserman Pristine, you could have dropped a ton of money on that. And then someone tell you, it's like, oh, that was a sheet cut card. You don't want that. And it's like, well, what do you mean? It's like, how are you supposed to know that? It's like, you've got like these handful of people like the Jeremy Lees of the world and other people that have all this knowledge, like all locked up in their brains. And gosh darn it, we're going to pull it out and publish it to the world because, people need to know this stuff. So sorry I'll get off my soapbox, but it just made me think of that and trying to remember exactly what Jeremy said, but there is kind of that, you have to understand how the card was cut and if that's matters to you or not.
Yeah, because the thought, the sheet cut obviously probably didn't come out of a pack is what kind of the prevailing thought is, right? Like if it was a little,
I don't know, because all cards are cut from a sheet. I've heard that too.
Oh, that's true. Well, they weren't my theory.
So
don't listen to me.
This is okay. We continue.
All right, we'll continue with Bernie Parent's 1968 rookie card. Now, I have said this before. I love the backs of some of these older cards. And this one, of course, has a little cartoon with a note that says, Bernie is an avid fisherman in the off-season. So I guess this is better than needing a job in the off-season, like Lou Nanny when we went over his card. But who knows? Maybe Bernie Parent did have an off-season job, but I just love the little cartoons. It's a little hockey player fishing with his hockey stick. It looks great. I love that stuff. And then I noticed something else on the back of this card, which I've never seen before, that I thought was just interesting. On the back, it says on the side, it says, watch NHL hockey on TV network. Yep, that's the exact wording. So I'm not sure what that meant. Was there a channel called TV Network, or are they just saying watch the NHL on TV?
And what year was this?
1968. Yeah, I thought about that too. Is there like 3 channels, and then they're like, go on.
Are you sure it doesn't say watch NHL hockey on TV network unless it's blacked out or behind a stupid ESPN Plus paywall?
Yeah, I didn't think they have to deal with that. Yeah, it literally says watch NHL hockey. I'm looking at it right now on TV network. I just think that's great.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know what it means.
That is cool.
It's great. I mean, are they just, I was like, I have so many questions. Is this just a general statement or what's going on? I also found it very interesting. On the front of the card, his position is listed as goal instead of goalie. I just think that's odd, but that's what it has. All right, Josh, current bid on this card. I just looked it up because it changed from when I put it in the show notes. It is currently bid at $210 US. The highest sale of this card I could find was a PSA 8 copy that sold for $5,550 on July 4th of last year from the PWCC vault. Obviously, this one's not going that high, but just to give a little frame of reference.
So where do you put Perrant in your like goalie list? Does he make your top 10?
Yeah, I'm sure he'd make the top 10. I haven't done, I mean, I did a little research when we were doing goalie Mount Rushmore, but he didn't play that many games when you look at some of these guys, so that probably will always kind of be held against him. He's only got 608 games played, but man, 2-time Vezina and a 2-time Conn Smythe in that short a career. And to be named one of the top 100 NHL's greatest players of all time is pretty good. Yeah, he was definitely probably in the top 10.
You put him above Jack Campbell, you think, on your list?
I think I would.
Okay, interesting. All right, the next older, more kind of vintagey card we wanted to look at was a couple that popped out to me. First was a 1980 OPG Mark Messier PSA 9, which is a pop 302. The 1980 set is one of my, I think, favorite sets. I really like 71. I like 80. This card in particular has and this is another thing I'm learning from Jeremy Troy, a PSA eye appeal rating in the top 30%, right? So they look at all the Messier PSA 9s and they, at least PSA's opinion or PWCC's opinion is that it's in the top 30% of those. Just in case anyone's wondering, where the PSA 9 is a pop of 302, the PSA 10 pop is 43. Messier, of course, is a 6-time Stanley Cup champion, 2-time Hart Trophy winner, and some might say the OG Draisaitl, huh? If Draisaitl is to McDavid as Messier is to Gretzky.
Yeah, he was definitely the OG.
The other, I think, really interesting aspect of this card for such a significant player in NHL history is that it's an error card. On the, not like a huge, ridiculous error, but on the back it says that he's a right-handed shot where Messier was left. I think you knew that already, right?
I think so. I think I remember reading that at one point. I probably have to jog my memory, but I'm pretty sure I remember that.
Last sale on this card was January 27th for $2,102 US. All-time high is $3,659 from the PWCC Weekly back in January of 2021. And current bid, it was, when I checked earlier, was $1,000. So I don't know. I just think that that's a really kind of cool card. I would love to have this card in my collection someday. The next one is one of Troy's favorites, and I picked it. I sniped you, Troy. I sniped you on the card highlighting portion of the Gong Show. It's a 1985 OPG Mario Lemieux PSA 9 Pop 624. Now, this one, Troy, has PWCC's superior eye appeal rating. Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is it's in the top 5% of all PSA 9s from an eye appeal rating. And given, so 624, so 5% would be like one of the 30 best, right? The 32 best or something like that. Obviously a big, important historical card.
So this card this is one that stole the Vachon Bakery design, right?
Oh, did it?
Remember that? That's what I said, because the Vachons came out in '83, and they had that curvy spot at the top where they put the logo, and then the '85 OPGs come out, and I'm like, that looks interesting. So I'm claiming.
I tried really hard to bring up that card on our
on the live show. Nice.
Yeah, but Jeremy in his beautiful mind is kind of like whizzing all, but he's going from like this card to this card to this card, and it just, we never kind of got there. But I was just curious if, like, from a longtime Canadian card collector, if Vachon was of any significance to him or any other people. But I have a way of not letting things go, so I'm sure I'll get back to it at some point. Again, the PSA 9 is pop 624, and PSA 10s is only 48. Gets pretty spendy when you try to go up a level. One of the reasons why I like this card is it feels like it's kind of that healthy bridge between not being like super replaceable, but being fairly liquid too, because there's a couple that sell every month. Last sale is on February 3rd for $2,923. All-time high is $10,880 US. And of course, February 2021. And the current bid is $2,600. So I think that eye appeal rating is having a factor, given that we're decently early on in the auction at this point, and it's already, with buyer's premium, probably exceeded its last sale. Is this a card you would love to I assume you would like to have at some point?
I would. I have 2 of the Topps versions. Raw, not graded, obviously.
Okay, now we're going to switch over really quick to the more modern side. And there's a couple, they're kind of like cousins, call them, and I'll just point them out first, and then Troy, you can get on to your pick. But there's a 2006 Upper Deck Evgeny Malkin Young Guns SGC 10, but gold label. So SGC Pristine, the 10 gold label. It's a pop 1. I'll totally admit, Troy, I am definitely a sucker for these like super high. It's like having like a black Amex card, right? Like you have like the black label BGS holder. I don't know why I get so googly eyed over that, but I do. and intrigued by the concept of the SGC 10 gold label too. In case you're wondering too on this card, so I mentioned it's a pop 1 for the gold label SGC. There's only one BGS 10 black label too. And again, one of the things I'll mention again, sort of that replaceability trap when it comes to Young Guns. If you love the Young Guns, and I really do like the 06 design. It's they did that, I think it was a tribute in last year's extended, and want one that's really hard to replace. This would be a very, very exclusive one to get. And you know that you have basically one of the 2 highest graded, in theory, most perfect, pristine copies of a Malkin Young Guns that exist. And so what makes this lot so interesting to me, Troy, is you got this confluence of Malkin, who a lot of people think is sorely underappreciated, the ultra rarity of having a pristine grade card, but then you also have the kind of the SGC gold label thing. And have we talked about gold label? At this point, I don't think we have.
We've kind of mentioned them in passing, but we haven't explained what it is.
Yeah, so it's higher. It means that all aspects of grading are deemed perfect by SGC. And I'll admit, and this is not a new take. I know a lot of people have this. They're really like killing themselves with the actual label of these, and it's too understated, or what's the word, Troy? Plain. It is.
It's plain. It's understated and plain because the gold is really just on the border of the label. If you just took a quick glance, you really wouldn't notice it. They need to figure out a way to make that more prominent. I know they probably don't want to do a full gold label because now you look like Beckett. So I'm wondering what they can do, but they definitely need to do something to call it out more.
But you could be across a trade or a card show hall and see a Beckett black label and be like, oh, right. I mean, that is a visual cue that gets you all warm and fuzzy in places from even great distances. That does not have the same impact with the SGC gold label. The other kind of interesting thing here too is, of course, SGC has an amazing heritage and vintage, and even there was 4 or 5 record breaking, whether it be baseball or football or whatever it was, sales last year, all-time sales for Ty Cobb or Hannes Wagner or the Mickey Mantle, and they were all SGC. So people understand the value, but they've, I think, struggled a little bit more in hockey. So long story short, you put all this together, you've got underappreciated guy Malkin, really cool Young Gun card, perfect grade from SGC, only one gold label, only one BGS black label. And to me, it's just going to be fascinating to see where this ends up. And just, I guess, for some value context, so PSA 10, which is a pop of 323, goes for about $575 right now. SGC 10 value is about $483, but that goes back to November, so because there aren't a lot of them, and so they don't sell real often. So I don't know. I think though, Troy, that this should be like a $1,500 plus US card. It just feels like if you're for the right Malkin collector, you're not going to get a better representation of a Young.
True, and I think another thing we need to bring up is that a lot of what we heard is SGC is they might be the toughest grader out there, maybe. We've definitely heard that they're really tough. I don't know if that translates to, the gold label and the value, but we'll see.
Current bid is $360 US, so as of right now, it is a steal. And then, okay, so I mentioned its cousin. Well, there's a 2014 Young Guns Pasta, David Pasternak, SGC 10 gold label as well. And this is a pop one. There are no BGS black labels, but there are 6 BGS 10s. So in order to be a BGS 10 black label, you have to have all 4 subgrades be a 10 grade. So it's a lot of the same factors. I'm not going to be super repetitive, but the one little twist on this one, of course, is not only is Pasta having an amazing year with 38 goals, 34 assists for 72 points in 51 games. Pretty sure we're not a mass show, Troy, but that's 1.4 points per game, which I think is pretty good. Then there's his team, which is 31-7-5, which is completely bonkers. So you take all those scenarios that we just talked about for Malkin, and you add a guy who's having a ridiculous season. And man, this is just another one where I can't wait to see kind of what happens with the auction. So again, a little value context is the current value on his PSA 10 Young Gun is about $1,000, which is up 50% in the last 6 months. So, I mean, there's been, I think, some growth in his values given the year he's having. But again, looking at a prediction standpoint, Troy, if Malkin should be a $1,500 card, this should be at least a $2,000 US card, if not way more.
Well, we'll see if the hobby truly loves Pasta.
Yeah. Current bid is $460. So again, in the steal territory. But yeah, how often are you going to see two SGC 10 gold labels in the same auction?
True.
So I just had to do it because I'm a sucker for those. What's the other one that you had kind of highlighted?
Yeah, just quickly, there is a 2007 Upper Deck the Cup Patrick Kane rookie patch auto out of 99. It's in a BGS slab. Now, it's just in a BGS authentic slab. There's no grades on the auto or the card itself. So the person that did this just got it authenticated.
You know what's interesting about this one?
Yeah.
There was a Jonathan Taves, same card with a BGS authentic slab in the last PWCC.
Interesting. Where it's the same guy.
Yeah.
So this card caught my attention. Obviously, once you just start scrolling enough and you see Blackhawk patches, and then you see Patrick Kane. I mean, these patches are sick. Patty Kane's a future Hall of Famer. He's on a tail end of a great career, maybe. I keep saying that every year, that he's on the tail end, and he just keeps playing great. I think really interesting is the next, we'll see the trade deadline coming up. Does he get moved? He kind of came out today and said he's really savoring these last, 5 to 6 games before the trade deadline. So maybe in his mind, he might be moving on from Chicago. But the card itself, 5-color patch, looks great. The auto is absolutely super clean, looks great. However, this card has black edges, and we all know what happens with black edges. They usually have some kind of issues themselves. And you can, if you zoom in, obviously, on the PWCC imaging, there's some edge and corner kind of colorization issues where it looks like the black didn't get all the way to the corner. It's small, it's minor, but it's there just to know. And maybe that's why the person originally didn't grade this card. They just did the authentic. I'm actually really, really interested to see where this card ends up. The most recent sale of a copy of this card I could find in the card ladder database, there was a BGS 7.5 with a BGS 10 auto, and it only had a 3-color patch, sold for $2,355 US on July 5th of last year. And right now, I just updated, the current bid is $1,425 US.
Oh, wow.
I think this one, I'm curious to see if it goes, I would think it's going to go for more than that last one that actually had the card graded and the auto graded, but it only had a 3-color patch. So it's a great looking card. I mean, if you're a Patty Kane fan, this would be a fantastic card. But
it's funny too that when it comes to Blackhawks patches, that a 3-color patch is like,
yeah, it's boring, right? It's like, well, I want what's the maximum? 7? Is it 7 or 8? 7,
I
think, yeah.
Man. All right, well, that is our picks for the weekly PWCC. Again, go to pwccmarketplace.com. You can get your bids in before Sunday night at 10 p.m. when all access extended bidding starts, and then you can bid there too because it's all access. So, yeah, we'll be looking forward to see how these ones do. We're going to roll into hobby news real quick. A couple quick stories coming out of the All-Star break. I don't know if you saw, but Dylan Cousins from your Sabres, Troy, signed a 7-year extension. I believe we're on that worth like total value like $50 million US, something like that. Do you think that Cousins, Troy, is a Gongshow listener?
I highly doubt it.
I think he might be, though, because I seem to remember someone named Troy giving him a whole bunch of advice this past summer about shooting the puck more, being a little more focused on scoring goals, right? Because he was a little bit of a disappointing year last year. And
be selfish.
I think he listened to you.
Yep, be selfish.
I think you deserve credit for the Cousins turnaround, Troy. He's having, like I said, he's having a pretty good year. 17 goals, 26 assists for 43 points, 49 games played, which is already his career high. But just out of the All-Star break, we're already there. We've talked about this too, where he's just on a young, exciting team. We'll have lots of eyeballs on them, assuming their NHL makes their games available for people to see, of course. A little shot there at the NHL. But I think it's good from a hobby perspective that he's staying on the Sabres, given, again, there's going to be so much attention on the team. From a hockey card perspective, he's a 2020 Young Gun, his PSA 10 pop, 645 with a 73% gem rate, Troy. Yikes. Again, Series 2, this magical difference between Series 1 and Series 2, is currently selling in the 110 US range on average. It is up about 57% since the start of the season. So back in mid-November was around $70. Yeah, given the probably pretty high print runs in 2020 and that gem rate, I would probably focus my investments in other places. Only other story that we have in hobby news is I saw on the NHL's website that I think today or Thursday, the day the podcast is released, ESPN is coming out with a documentary on the Avalanche and their cup run last year. We'll have a lot of like never before seen stuff, behind the scenes footage, all that good stuff. But of course, Troy, it's airing on ESPN Plus. So let's just create this amazing documentary, get people excited about the game, and put it behind a paywall where essentially 16th of or less of the people that would have watched it normally will see it. So I'm jumping back on the soapbox again here just for a couple seconds. And what I'll say, of course, is I get that ESPN produces it and makes it. They can put it wherever they want. But wouldn't you, I also saw the story on the NHL website, so it means they're aware of it. Wouldn't you think at some point they would go to ESPN and say something like, "Hi, ESPN, this is the NHL here. Oh, we're so excited that you're coming out with this documentary, and we think, man, this would really get people excited about the game of hockey. What do we have to do? How can we work with you? Maybe how can we help you on the revenue side, where instead of putting this behind your stupid, dumb paywall that nobody sees and nobody can ever see anything, and actually show people the documentary, so maybe a casual sports fan might get excited about hockey and like our sport. Why is this so hard?"
Well, knowing ESPN, and if they agreed to that, they would probably put it on Sunday night against Sunday Night Football. They're like, "Oh, look, we're going to put it on, the regular channel." Oh, sorry.
Now airing during the Super Bowl.
During the Super Bowl. I don't know.
It's just every turn on the road to success. It's like, I don't know if it's like Gary Bettman, but somebody drives a car off the road constantly.
Yeah.
I think we should put in next time for the NHL broadcasting rights.
$1.
Can you imagine us? Of course, we'd put ourselves on the TV panel. It'd be like Wayne Gretzky, goalie coach Troy, Josh, who has no clue about Austin Matthews.
I was going to say, would you sit there and adamantly be like, "And last year's Stanley Cup champion, Calgary Flames," it's like, and arguing that it was not the Colorado Avalanche, it was some other team.
I would just try to tickle Biz Nasty the whole time.
Get him going
on there. So again, I could not bring this up. I'm so sick of this league and them not knowing how to. Rule one of people liking your sport is letting them see your sport. Okay, we'll go on to new product releases. This will be really short. It's been a little bit of a quiet week, or not week, but since Monday. Wait, what day is it? Since Monday, hasn't been a lot of news on the cup. I guess no news is good news. Hasn't been pushed. Still haven't seen the checklist. So all the chatter and the prevailing thought, and a lot of people are really definitively saying that the 2020-2021 the Cup is coming out February 22nd. I think, though, we're getting to the point, if that is true, so what is it, the 8th right now? It'll be the 9th when this comes out. It has to come out in the next 3-4 days, right?
Yeah, the checklist, for sure.
And if it doesn't, then my spidey senses might think that, I don't know if we're going to make the 22nd date here. You agree with that?
I agree 100%. But you never know. I mean, maybe they just are going to hold it off until like a week before and then just say, "Here it is," and then drop it.
And then the only other thing I had, a new product release, is, I don't know, maybe this should have been in our social roundup section, but we did a post with after like week 1 of the top selling synergy cards. I don't know if you saw that, Troy, but top selling one so far is like a Sidney Crosby auto for $500, and then it goes like the next one's like Cole Caulfield for $200, and the next 4 like in the $200 range. And the point being here on synergy is, first I'll say I really like the product. I think it's very fun to rip. I think the cards are really kind of interesting. They're that interesting mix of acetate and foil and like cutout cards. So it's kind of everything blended together from a technology perspective. And it's relatively affordable at $100. But this is not a box, I don't think, that you buy thinking, well, I'm going to buy a box for $100 and make $1,000.
Yeah.
I just don't see that happening. And you should expect to lose money if you're going to rip synergy, and you do it because you like the cards and it's fun and it's $100 and you're going to PC them anyways and you don't care. But this is not a investing type product box, I don't think. That's just what I'm seeing so far. You want to counter them?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not the biggest synergy guy.
It's not your thing.
Not my thing. I haven't really watched that much of it. I've seen like our posts and stuff on it, but
you don't like the logo. We understand.
It's an energy drink.
It's an energy. Well, okay, so Troy, this is kind of exciting. We have an announcement. It's always fun to have announcements. We're thrilled actually to announce that we're partnering up with Slab Sharks to promote their Canadian eBay consignment service. And so obviously we want to thank them for supporting our show and hockey content producers in general. Slab Sharks makes it really easy to sell your graded hockey and other sports cards via their consignment service, and they do weekly eBay auctions. I guess why we think, Troy, I'm speaking for us, but why we think it's a good fit is it really kind of, I think they help solve a very difficult supply and sort of like demand logistical problem that exists. I know for a fact between US and Canada, I'm sure other places where, right, we have most of the good hockey cards are in Canada, but it's so confusing and expensive to ship them to the US that a lot of Canadians that have these nice cards, they don't want to sell them to people like us. Not that they don't want our money, but they don't want to deal with all that crap that goes along with it. And so all these cards remain in Canada, and our little American grubby hands can't get our fingers on. And we both find that annoying. So here comes this company, Slab Sharks, where they're kind of figuring out all the ways to make this possible. And so they accept consignments only from Canadians, but they're the ones that have the hockey cards anyways. And then they put them for sale, and then they make it so really easy if you're Canadian to sell your card. You don't have to do any of the hassle. You just give it to them, and they take care of it. And then as Americans, we can get access to these cards, and they run Thursday to Thursday auctions. So it seems like a really good fit in helping kind of spread the word. They're growing like crazy to Canadian cardholders that might want to sell. And then I think the point I'd make, Troy, on the kind of American side is what we're seeing too. And I don't know if this has been your kind of personal experience, but there's like more and more places where cards are being sold. Mm-hmm. And so as a buyer, which we primarily are, it's hard to keep track of like when and where I need to be in tuned to where to look for stuff that I might want to be interested in. And when you have it in, PWCC was really one of the originators of this, or you have these like consigning services that have standardized times. And so like, that Slab Sharks is going to be Thursday to Thursday on eBay, because they're a Canadian consigner, they're going to have tons of kind of sweet hockey cards that we don't get to see very often. So as a buyer, it's almost, I know to go there and to look where to look and check it out. You can go, I'd recommend any kind of one that's in the market to buy cards to go and Google like Slab Sharks Inc. eBay, and it shows that they have a seller's page and you can see all their listings there. I don't know about your thoughts, Troy, but I love the fact that they're just making it easier to facilitate cards moving across the border and easier in general for people to sell cards.
Yep. No, I agree 100%. That's always been
to me, that speaks to our
it's always been kind of a cluster at times to figure out the whole Canadian US and selling stuff and shipping it. And anything that can make that easier, I'm all for.
Well, it took me like when we were selling more on eBay ourselves, it took me a while to convince you to even open up to Canada.
Yeah.
Because your whole thought process was, I don't want to deal with it.
Yep.
Right. And I understand that. It's like, why? It's just a whole bunch of complexity that nobody loves. So we're going to be working to kind of integrate them and some of the cards that they're selling and doing like recaps for them into the show. But we just wanted to make the announcement today that they're partnering up with the Gong Show. And so again, we appreciate them and can't wait to start working with them more closely. All right, Troy, it's mailbag time.
Mailbag. I'm ready.
You ready? Let's do this. We have some doozies this week. A lot of these questions I really love. So we'll get right into it. First one is an awesome one from Facebook. And I love when they make me laugh. It's always a good part of your day when you read a question and you just laugh. So Facebook Dave Preston, if you're stuck on a deserted island with one person, who would it be hockey related? I assume Troy would choose Pekka Rinne or Nikita Kucherov, and Josh would choose Jeremy Lee. Am I talking about Jeremy Lee or what? Okay, so I guess I was on first thought. So it'd be a tough choice not to take Jeremy. I admit that, Dave. But if I could only have one person, I think I would choose Troy, because I would want him to continue to explain the intricacies of superior goalie technique by using a stick to diagram in the sand. And you would probably diagram, what is it, the Golden Alley or the Golden...
Royal Road,
right? Well, this is the Royal Road, Josh. This is the Royal Road. And then if there was Wi-Fi on this island, we could keep our Hockey Cards podcast. So that's why I choose you, Troy.
Well, I feel bad. I didn't choose you. So I said definitely Pekka Rinne would be a great choice for me, as I'd probably talk his ear off with questions about his career, playing style, upbringing, growing up in Finland, and just talking about the goalie position. And then I laughed when he put Kucherov. That's fantastic. I love that. Mm-hmm. But another one for me, maybe would, I don't know, Scotty Bowman to me would be very interesting too, because of all the stories and knowledge he has. So I would say either Pekka Rinne or Scotty Bowman. And Kucherov.
Well, hockey,
we'll say Kucherov's a close third.
I'm gonna ask my own follow-up to this, just to you. Hockey related again, so hockey personality or player. Who's the guy you would choose, like you would eliminate, you wouldn't want on the island with you?
Don Cherry.
Okay.
I don't want to see his bright suits in the middle of the desert island. It'd annoy me.
Yeah. I was thinking Sutter.
Oh, Ryan Suter, you mean?
No. The Calgary
Oh,
coach.
I'd love to have the Calgary coach on there.
Now I'm like brain farting Daryl, right?
Yeah, I think so.
There's so many Suter Sutters, and it's like that's the whole like Luke Hughes, Quinn Hughes, Jack Quinn whole thing. I get confused there. All right, this one's from Gongshow Discord. Thaddeus Stewart. This one I couldn't tell if he was being like super sarcastic or not. So Thaddeus, I think that sometimes you have to remember we do dumb humor, not smart humor. Everyone has a favorite team, and he says notice the Canadian spelling of favorite, right, with the U. A lot of people even have a second favorite team. But here's a question, my friends, and I've discussed numerous times. Question me and my friends have discussed numerous times. Who would your seventh favorite team be? This is where you kind of, for me, might be Winnipeg. After a lengthy process of elimination, it came down to it's a team that I don't really have anything against any angst toward. And also City, which my parents met. So, I mean, a slight debt of gratitude towards. Looking to hear your deep dive on this discussion. All right, Troy, you went in hard.
I did. I ran with this. So I said it's a great question. I'm going to kind of go through my thought process. My first favorite team, or obviously my favorite team, is the Wild. Easy enough to guess. I said my second team would be, just due to the legacy of the North Stars, I'd go with the Dallas Stars, plus they have Ottinger. Now I started looking at...
Okay, wait, can I stop you, though? I'm sorry, but I could not be more opposed to that. I have a deep-seated hatred for the Dallas Stars.
I don't blame the team. I blame the owner, Norm Green, who moved them. So I can't fault the current team or anyone there, because I think they're all gone by now.
Well, maybe hatred is a bad... I don't hate them, but I can't support the fact that not only did they steal our team, they stole our name, they stole our colors, which they don't even use, which we kind of get to use now, so I guess that's okay. And then we have this, like, I mean, honestly, the Wild, what is the Wild? And we're like a Christmas tree. So I just have a lot of bitterness over that. But I'm glad that you have a better...
I'm fine. I'm a bigger person.
Positive
I can do it.
Okay.
I'm saying my second favorite team is the Dallas Stars.
All right.
Now I started looking at who I have to throw out. So I have to throw out all the Wild rivals. And I laugh when I say Wild rivals, because I honestly believe Wild fans consider these teams rivals, but these teams' fans don't consider the Wild a rival. It's a very Minnesota.
That's how it always works in Minnesota.
Very Minnesota thing. Yeah,
like everyone says, oh, the Vikings hate the Packers. And then the Wisconsin people's retort to that is, well, the Packers don't care about you. They hate the Bears.
They hate the Bears.
Right? And that's like...
All right, so
I agree with you.
So I'm throwing out the Jets, the Avalanche, the Blues, and the Canucks. And then personally, I've already talked about them, I'm throwing out the Penguins because they beat the North Stars, and I'm still bitter about that, and the Stanley Cup. So I got rid of a bunch of teams.
So you don't consider the Blackhawks a rival anymore?
I don't know. I thought about that, but I loved the Blackhawks as a kid, so I didn't throw them away.
Okay.
All
right.
Third, I said my third favorite team just would be Buffalo, because they have a young, exciting core, and at least if I followed them, I would have exciting games and a lot of players to watch every night. My fourth favorite team, I said the Predators, because I like the Pekka ties. Nashville's a great city. I've actually been to a Predators game in Nashville, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in an NHL game. It was almost like a concert. So my fourth favorite team is the Predators. Fifth, I'm going with the Kraken. I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest, so I have geographic ties to the region. Plus, rooting on the newest NHL team I thought would be fun. Plus, this will make sense the further we go down the mailbag questions, but I'm a fan of Crack Baby Matty Beniers. Oh, yeah, and they also have a deranged mascot in Bowie. So I'm all in. That's my fifth favorite team. Sixth favorite team, I said I need a Canadian team with some history. So I said, let's just go with the Montreal Canadiens. They're an awesome franchise, ton of history. They are having a kind of a down year. They got some great players. Obviously, Caulfield's injured for the year. They're having a down year, so I said it'd be fun to watch the ride if they could come back and win a cup since... When was the last time they won the cup? 93, I think, something like that, long time ago. Mm-hmm. So I put them as 6. So then, here we go. We landed number 7. Here's my 7th favorite team. I thought long and hard about this, but I landed on the Philadelphia Flyers. Favorite player of all time.
You're such a suck-up.
No. Favorite player of all time, Pelle Lindbergh. Played too short of a career with Philly. I was a huge Ron Hextall fan. Again, Philadelphia, great city, lots of history. I've yet to go there and visit for some reason, but now I actually have a reason to go visit. Plus, I said I could go see friend of the show, Irish Flyer Collector, and check out a game and have a drink with him. And he could tell me all about the Philadelphia Flyers. Plus, I love the color scheme, orange, white, and black. And finally, a deranged mascot and Gritty. I'm in. That was it. That's my 7th favorite team.
I really love your enthusiasm for mailbag, and I mean that genuinely and honestly. I get so excited to see your answers. So, Thaddeus, my brain doesn't work the way Troy's does. I'm very binary. I have like room in my life for 2 favorite teams. So like Troy, you have to pick the Wild, right? Lovable losers from Minnesota. And then I'm thinking like pairing a fine wine with cheese, who would pair well with, I don't want to pick anyone else in the Western Conference. I'll go Eastern Conference. And I'm going to go with the Sabres because they're young, exciting, but they're total lovable losers who we know will botch it in a big moment. And misery loves company. So why not just have one team that you root for that continuously disappoints you? Why not have two? I'm going to go with the Buffalo Sabres. Next question, Gongshow Discord from Wingfling. This kind of gets back to a point you just made, Troy. For nearly 30 years, no Canadian team has won the Cup. What would you say is the reason behind this? Are Canadian cities and winters unattractive for free agents? Is this Canadian dollar an issue? Something else? I'll let you go first. I have a couple thoughts, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I went down a rabbit hole again. This is a big.
You did, man.
This is a big can of worms. So let's get started. And I had help. I have these thoughts on what I think it is, but I also love reading research on this. And The Athletic, Down Goes Brown, Sean, I can never say his last name, McIndoe. I just give up. Sean
Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
John Mountain Dew.
Yeah, there you go. He goes by Down Goes Brown. He does that article, but he wrote a great article on this. And it just provided some color on the thoughts that I had. So here, I want to start with this. And this is from the Athletic article. They did an actual statistical analysis of this whole Canadian team hasn't won a cup in the 28 years. Dom Luszczyszyn, who's their kind of stats analytics guy, ran these numbers. And here's the crazy stat. Since 1993, the numbers tell us that it would have been more likely for a team from Canada to win 10 or more Stanley Cups with a 1% probability than to win 0 cups, which has a 0.7% probability. That is just, that to me is crazy. The most likely number of cups that should have been won by a Canadian team was 4, and that had a 20% probability of happening.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, so
it's almost impossible that a team hasn't won.
It's literally almost impossible. So that's how I wanted to start it. And that was just something that I thought was really, really interesting. So again, looking at all of the reasons, there's really eight reasons that this article kind of mentions. Some maybe a little tongue in cheek, but I'm going to go over these really, really quick because we don't have enough time to go over all of them. But first reason that a Canadian team has not won the Cup in the past 28 years is Canadian fans are not demanding enough. Canadian fans like to see their teams win, but they will support them even if they don't. American fans are more fickle. Summed up, Canadian teams want to win, American teams need to win. Interesting. It's an interesting thought.
I don't know if I buy that.
It's the second reason. Canadian fans are too demanding. So the complete opposite. NHL is the top sport in Canada. Every decision is microanalyzed. Nobody can stick to a plan because the fans won't let them. Third reason, Canadian teams won't or can't bottom out. Canadian teams rarely bottom out, and only recently. They sit in the mushy middle. Again, recently, Canadian teams have bottomed out, so maybe this is changing. But I get where they're going with this. It's like they just can't in the past.
Yeah.
They just haven't really tanked. Now, we have seen Canadian teams, get the number 1 draft picks. We've seen that happen. But they're kind of saying that's more of a recent phenomenon. And so this could help explain the previous, 20 years maybe. Fourth reason, it's all a conspiracy. What happened the last time a Canadian team won the Cup in 1993? Yep, Gary Bettman became the commissioner in 1993. We know he's American and therefore wants Canadian teams to lose. He is focused on the American market, and there you have it. Fun to think about, but let's be honest. This can't be it due to all the fallout that would occur if this was true. It's just fun to talk about.
You know why that is automatically 100% false? Because if Gary Bettman wanted Canadian teams to lose, they would win every single time.
No kidding, because he did the complete opposite thing. All right, fifth reason. It's the economics. Canadian dollar lags behind the U.S. dollar usually. Also, Canadian teams don't have as much money as their American counterparts. Maybe not really that true because Toronto and Montreal basically print money from what kind of the analysis they did. Sixth reason, the best players don't want to play in Canada. I put spicy by this one. Whether due to media attention, higher taxes, cold weather, or whatever else, many star players just prefer to play in the U.S. Seventh reason, they called it the Don Cherry factor. Canada wants to watch good Canadian boys playing old-time hockey. And what they were getting at is that they're slow to adapt. Like, think about the Russian players. Where did all the Russians go? Detroit. Because they were the first ones to jump on them, even though everyone knew that they were out there, they were good. And again, they're just saying the Canadian teams are really slow to adapt. Even with the European wave that came in recently or within the last 30 years, they're saying the Canadian teams are kind of slow. And the final reason, maybe this is all just bad luck. 6 Canadian teams have gone to the finals during the drought, and 4 of those went to a Game 7. In total, Canadian teams have played 6 games where a win would have meant a cup, and they lost them all. These losses include the Canucks hitting the crossbar in 94, the Flames' controversial no goal in 2004, and the Oilers losing their goalie to injury in 2006. Holy crap, a lot of reasons. I'll let you go, Josh. I think it comes down to like the economics, maybe a little with the Canadian teams won't or can't bottom out. And I don't know how big of I'm really intrigued by that Don Cherry factor, how they're kind of slow to adapt. Maybe that has something to do with it. And finally, I would go with it just seems like bad luck.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
You need a nap?
I know. My throat is so dry right now.
I have a theory that I actually think is a good one, and I do want to get your reaction to it. I think that it's very difficult for any NHL team, it's not just Canadian, to adapt their roster and make changes and get better because of 2 factors. Number one, the contracts are guaranteed. And the second is it's a hard salary cap. And because if you think about other sports, baseball, all contracts are guaranteed, but there's no salary cap. So if you sign a guy for 12 years and $1 billion and he stinks, you can just eat it, right? You can't do that in the NHL. And because their salary cap, they don't have as much revenue, their salary cap is kind of low, right? And so you have all these teams that sign like the Parise Suter contracts for like 12 years. And we see this with the Wild. It's really hard to make your team better. So unless you build like a very, very good and strong team out of the draft and you make impeccable free agent choices and sign them to good contracts, it's really hard to, like when you're in the situation like the Oilers are right now, how do you make moves, like significant moves to get better, right? It's all like table scrap stuff you hear about. Like, well, they eked out $2 million of salary cap to go sign somebody other than McDavid or Draisaitl, right? Or to improve the blue line or get a goalie. I just think it's harder for teams to make moves. It's interesting you say that because they did. I had to look it up while we were talking. There's a little blurb where they talk about the cap limits and what they can spend on their roster. And what they're saying is obviously that hampers them. But if they're a smart team, they can actually outspend the cap if they want to. And they actually give some examples like what the Tampa Bay did with Kucherov, kind of with the whole hip injury. Obviously, if you do that enough times. Oh, yeah. You put him on long-term IR. And if you do that enough times, the NHL is going to crack down on you. So I think that's why they don't go into that much. But no, it's definitely interesting. Next question from Just Hockey Cards, Instagram. What's it going to take to break the Upper Deck monopoly on hockey cards? All right, Troy. You didn't go all in, but you got a good answer. I got a short, concise answer, I hope. I said the NHL deciding that they don't want a single manufacturer having licensed NHL cards. That's basically where we're at right now. There used to be multiple manufacturers of licensed NHL cards, and the NHL decided to go with an exclusivity deal with Upper Deck. It's important to point out that Upper Deck is not the only manufacturer of hockey cards, though. There's also unlicensed hockey cards produced by Leaf, Pro Set, which is owned by Leaf. I think there's President's Choice I've seen. Yeah, is that the doctor guy people talk about? No, Brian Dr. Gray, right? That's Dr. Beckett, right? No, that's Leaf. No, Doctor. There's like the President's Choice guy is like a President's Choice doctor guy. Maybe. I don't know. Topps makes NHL stickers. There's actually a whole host of other hockey cards, whether it be minors, European leagues, made by some other companies. I tried to look at the back of some of them, and they were different companies. So there's definitely a whole bunch of unlicensed product, or not, I should say non-NHL product that's made by other companies. However, it's either going to be the NHL deciding, obviously, they don't want Upper Deck to have the monopoly or the exclusivity anymore, or maybe someone comes in and buys Upper Deck. That's what I would think. I agree with you. I think this is the NHL's preferred. It's the simplest solution. And there's lots of negatives to it. Like we know that Upper Deck having stronger competition competition forces everyone to be better, right? It's just the way it is. But how you see how intertwined Upper Deck has now become in NHL events and NHL arenas, it's really hard to do that if there's multiple companies, right? So that's an advantage of having one supplier. I think if anything changes it, it's going to be like a Fanatics coming in and offering equity. That's what got baseball and basketball and football away from Topps and Panini, right? It's saying, we'll make you part owner of this to both the Players Association and the league. right? So that's a very compelling, and it gives, puts skin in the game for the league. So that's the change there. But I just don't see it going back to having 5 manufacturers for licensed product even if that could solve some problems. All right, Instagram, Ace of Grades 28. I love that name. Is Fleer Retro Hockey overvalued? Will people care about those cards looking back? I personally don't think so. I'm not the biggest Fleer Retro expert, but I do like the sets. I love some of like the best inserts seem to have come from there, and they only seem to be more and more hobby relevant. So from my limited vantage point into Fleer Retro, I don't think that they're going to be forgotten. And one of the big reasons is it's not just a hockey brand. It's a brand that transcends hockey, right? And this, I think, is important from a long-term value perspective. So if somebody's never been collected hockey cards, they may not know OPG Platinum or what that's about. But if they're interested in getting the hockey hobby and they come from basketball card collecting or Marvel collecting, they're going to know what Fleer Retro is and really understand kind of the value and equity it has in the marketplace. And so I think that kind of makes it a little more relevant from an ongoing basis. Anything to add to that, Troy?
Nope, I agree with your answer. And I have nothing to add.
Okay, Gongshow Discord 409 Sports Guy. With 2021 The Cup being released in 2023, does it tarnish the idea of rookie card in the set? 409, I don't think it tarnishes the idea of rookie card just because it's such a monumental set. If this was a lesser known or cared about release, maybe that can be the case. My wonder, though, and what your question made me think about is, given all the anticipation and the hype and the build up to this, do you think, Troy, it's almost going to be impossible to live up to people's expectations?
I'm going through that question in my head. Probably. Looking at this question, I don't think it tarnishes the idea of rookie cards. It's kind of disappointing. But man, yeah, the hype changes now that it's going to be 2 years after the actual rookies, and they've been playing for 2 years maybe, or maybe no years, depending. But just kind of how we're going to see a flip on who the chases are. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe. I'm going to say maybe. I'll take the easy way out.
All right, next, Instagram, Top Shelf, Cookie Sniper 88. If Ovechkin does not get the scoring title, I'll take this part. You can take your part. How will that affect his card's value? And then he asks, and has Troy ever taken a ride on the struggle bus during his illustrious career? It has been illustrious. So I'll take if Ovechkin does not win the scoring title, how does that affect his card values? Top Shelf, Cookie Sniper 88, I think it affects it greatly because I think a lot of his current pricing is, what do they say, like has the scoring title baked into it. Right, it's assumed that he's going to get it, and you would see a pretty, I think, precipitous drop if he doesn't get there. Before you move on to your part of the question, do you agree with that, Troy?
Yeah, because I think there's been a lot of build up and run up, and if he doesn't get there, I think we'll see a drop for sure.
Okay, now let's talk about your Troy and the struggle
bus during my illustrious career. So I wasn't exactly sure what my illustrious career was, so I kind of went whole hog on this answer, and I said, yes, I have definitely been on the struggle bus. Obviously, as a hockey player, I was a goalie, definitely had rough patches, as all goalies do, so I've definitely been on the struggle bus there. And then as a goalie coach, I said always in the back of your head, there's this whole crisis of confidence. There's so much info on the position. At times, you wonder if you're up to date on everything. Are you giving the goalies the best shot at succeeding? All that stuff. So maybe I'm always on the struggle bus if that's what I'm thinking. But however, that, it really leads me to always work on my coaching skills, on concepts, on how I teach the position. So it's actually helped me. Plus, the goalies I work with during the season and during our summer program also go to other individual goalie coaches. So you always have that kind of weird dynamic where you got to make sure either you're all on the same page, or if you have different opinions, make sure you can explain why. I actually like that they go to different coaches and get different ideas, different training. I'm one of those that I do not do private lessons. I don't ever want to do it because I think it's a conflict of interest. I don't want to make a decision on who makes our varsity team along with our head coach from a girl that I had to that I gave private lessons to in the summer. I just never want to be put in that position. So that's why I don't do any of that private goalie coaching over the summer. And then I said, finally, there's an interesting fact about me is that, and this is not a humble brag. This is just, I just want to say this. Every varsity goalie I've worked with in high school has went on to play college hockey at some level. And I said, I do take pride. I do take pride in that. However,
Yeah, you
Our
should.
varsity starter from last year decided not to play hockey in college as she couldn't find a Division I program to join. A lot of this was due to the whole COVID thing, how the NCAA granted an extra year of eligibility to the current players, and with goalies having such a limited amount of positions, she couldn't find a Division I team, and she didn't want to go Division III. She was a terrific.
And Division I women's hockey is more limited.
Oh, for sure, very limited. And obviously, she was a terrific goalie. Definitely deserved a spot somewhere. She was one of those kids that stuck with our program, worked her tail off. I mean, her not playing, knowing how hard she worked, definitely made me struggle as did I always, you always want to do best for your players, right? And make sure they succeed and reach their goals. And you always wondered, is there anything you could have done better to help them? So that was definitely a struggle bus time. However, fast forward to last week, and it's announced that she has now joined the Gophers women hockey team. Yes. The Minnesota Gophers, the number 3 ranked team in the nation. She's now on their team and is the 3rd string goalie. So
she's the Kurt Warner of women's hockey.
It was one of those out of nowhere kind of things. And all of a sudden we saw the roster come out and we saw her name on there and we're like, what? So I immediately texted her and she's like, yeah, I just joined last week. I'm so happy. I was like, well, that's the best news I've seen in a long time. So that was awesome. There we go. Yes, I've been on the struggle bus.
But you're not on it currently, and unfortunately, although well
deserved. I don't need. Hopefully, no press conferences for me in the near future.
From Instagram and McCleb Hockey Cards, is it worth to send a card already graded to PSA? The idea is to increase the card value. So I'm not quite sure I totally understand what this is going for. I think you mean resubbing a card. So maybe a card got a 9 and you think it should be a 10. Should you crack it and resub it? I don't know if I really have an opinion on that. To me, that's a gambler's move. It's a personal choice. You just got to be willing to risk the grading cost and time. And you never know, it might come back a lower grade too.
Yeah.
It just depends what grader you get on that day. But there are cases where people have taken an 8 and turned it into a 10, or a 9 that's become a 10. So yeah, it just depends on how much what sort of gambler mentality you have.
Yeah, and I think he might be referring to this too. There's also crossover service, right? Where I can actually send in, I think, an SGC card to PSA, and they'll do a crossover evaluation and give you an idea of what they think it would be. Now, they would obviously have to crack it then and then grade it, so you never know if that's right. But
and I don't like that because of bias.
No, I don't like that either.
If they see a BGS 9 on it, they're in their mind. There's no way this is.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Right, they're not going to be able. Yeah.
Just know that is an option out there, but I have never done it, and I haven't heard the best things about it. So
okay, last question from Big Shot Junior, but I think it's Jay. I think he corrected us last time. Could be the question of the week here, Troy. Well, your struggle bus one was good too. There are lots of good questions, but will you fellas be attending the expo in Edmonton? If so, I'll front you a beer and a corn dog. Also, can you refer to all Kraken rookies as crack babies? That would be great. Thanks. Well, I'll say, we were, to this point, only planning on attending the Toronto Expo in April. But, Jay, when you start talking free beer, things can change really quickly. So that's a hell of an offer.
What about corn dogs?
Yeah, corn dogs, too. And, yes, it would be an honor to call all Kraken rookies
I've already started. I have already
laugh.
started. I had a question, and I called Maddie Beniers a crack baby, so I'm starting with it.
So if we ever make a T-shirt with that, now we're going to have to cut Jay in.
Oh, there we go.
For the revenue. All right. Well, that's our show for this Thursday. If you like the episode, please leave a rating review on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast app you listen to us on. If you love the show, and how can you not, we talked all about Troy's personal life and feelings today, and want to support us, please consider a Patreon donation and become a patron. For $5 a month, you can join our out of 99 support level tier. Easy to do. Go to the hockeycardsgongshow.com website and click on our Become a Patron link. You can go to the Patreon website and search, it's patreon.com. Search for Hockey Cards Gong Show. Find us there. Or there's a link in the show description for the podcast app you're listening to us on right now. Finally, you can find the link to our Patreon in our link tree, which is in our Instagram and TikTok profiles too. Thank you for considering to do that. If you're not following us on social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. All you got to do is search Hockey Cards Gong Show. And Troy, the Hockey Cards Gong Show podcast is a production of Dollar Box Ventures LLC. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all on Monday.